Welcome to Lesson 9 in this course in Biblical Hebrew. If you've been following through the previous 8 lessons, you'll realise that we're still working on how to read and pronounce the text. And in this final lesson of this section of the course, I'm going to be just mopping up a few bits and bobs in terms of accents and what happens when Shewas come together, and what happens when you see a letter that doesn't have any vowels underneath it, and a few other things that will help you to read and pronounce the text more accurately, and just to explain a few things that may cause confusion if you didn't know about them. So it's a bit bitty, but let's go and have a look at some of these bits and bobs. Now that we've learnt about dagesh and about short and long vowels and about open and closed syllables, we now need to think about how these rules that we've learnt affect the shewa. So the first thing we need to understand is that if you have two simple shewas together, the first one is silent and the second is vocal. And I'm going to give you a word that has as an example of that now. And it's this word. Sifracha. So the second of these is vocal, sifracha, and the first is silent, sifracha. So that's the first thing we need to know about the shewa. And that same rule applies if you have a dagesh. So if we have a look at this word, kitalu, the middle letter has a dagesh forte in it, which means that it effectively doubles the letter. And you'll remember from the previous lesson that that's the effect of dagesh forte. So if we write that out as if there were two letters there, it looks like that. And so you have the same issue. The first shewa is silent, and the second shewa is vocalised. So when you see a shewa under a letter with a dagesh forte in it, assume it works in the same way. Another rule about the simple shewa is if you have two of them together at the beginning of a word, they combine and become a chirek. So here's an example for you. The name Samuel, which is pronounced Shmuel, and that is a vocal shewa. And if you want to pop this preposition on the front, le, you end up with these two shewas coming together at the beginning of the word. And the way we deal with that is they combine to form that. Lishmuel. So this shewa is no longer vocal, it's silent, because the force of that vocal shewa has been combined with the first vocal shewa into a chirek, lishmuel. Now, if you have two shewas together and the second of them is composite, the first one is lengthened, but not to a chirek. It lengthens to the corresponding vowel that the composite shewa refers to. So if we take the name Edom, and again we pop our preposition on the front with its vocal shewa, this has to change, and it looks like this. Le'edom. I'll give you one more example, and this one uses a chatev pathach. So we take the word gavor. Again, we pop our preposition on the front, which would have that, but because of this, we have to lengthen that, and so it becomes a pathach, lakavor. The reason for this is it just makes it easier to say, so it's all about pronouncing it out loud. The next sign that I want to talk about is called Mappiq, and Mappiq occurs in a hey. You'll remember from the vocalization video that we pronounce a hey like an ordinary English H, and the cheth is a much harsher sound, a ch sound. Well, when hey has this Mappiq in it, it takes on a similar sound to cheth, and it's used in certain particular situations. Here's an example for you. If you have a noun like soos, which means horse, and you want to make it her horse with a feminine singular third person ending, it's sousach, and the Mappiq there makes it a harsher sound. You'll remember that when we were looking at the Dagesh, there were some occasions when the Dagesh forte was used in order to aid pronunciation. Well, sometimes where there's a Dagesh forte, it disappears again for ease of pronunciation. So a good example of this is the common word vayahi, and it happened. But it's very often said so frequently and so quickly that the Dagesh is removed, and you end up with this word, vayahi. Sometimes you will have a metheg added just to make it clear that this is a vocal shua. But even then, sometimes even that doesn't happen because this word is so often used. But you can have a line over the top called a Rapheh. Another example of this is in the word bikashu. So again, if the Dagesh disappears, see it's not there anymore, then a Rapheh over the top indicates that it used to be there. But this word is pronounced more quickly, bikashu, and it's just easier to say that way. So that's Rapheh. Now let's think about quiescent letters, and these are aleph, hey, wow, and yod. They're very weak letters, and so sometimes they disappear altogether in pronunciation. Let me give you an example or two. If we have the word for God, Elohim, and we pop the preposition le in front of it, you'll know from earlier on in this video that the Shewa here has got to turn into a serol, le Elohim. But because this is such a weak letter, what happens is this vowel and this vowel get joined together into a longer vowel, sere. So let's just tidy that up a bit. It ends up looking like this, Lelohim. And you'll see that Aleph hasn't got any vowels under it at all because it's effectively disappeared from the pronunciation because it's so weak. Let's have a look at Yod. So this is Judah, Yehuda. And again, if we want to pop our preposition on the front like that, Le Yehuda, we know that these two would combine ordinarily to become a short hirek in there, like that. But because the yod is so weak, we actually put them together into a long hirek. You end up with this, lihuda. So the yod has stopped acting as a consonant. And here's another example for you. In the word for death, marveth, the wow is a consonant. But when it's attached to another word, these two vowels combine to become cholem. So we end up with this. And that is no longer a consonant, it's merely a big vowel. Now we're just going to go back and have another look at the gutturals. Aleph, Hey, Chet, and Ayin. The first thing that we remember about these from the lesson about the Dagesh is that they cannot take a strong Dagesh, a Dagesh forte. And we dealt with the consequences of that in that lesson. The second thing to remember about the gutturals is that if they have a vocal shua, it has to be a composite one. So it's either that one, Kethibh, Pathach, or that one, Kethibh, Sichol, or that one, Kethibh, Chametz. The third thing to remember about the gutturals is that they prefer the vowel pathach. So if I put up the word melech, this is what's called a segolate noun because it takes 2 sigols. And there's no gutturals in this word. But if we have another segolate noun that does take a guttural, does have a guttural in it, which is this one, you would expect it to have a sigol here. But because you've got this guttural at the end, it prefers pathach. So we get rid of the sigol and we put a pathach there instead. It's entirely to do with the fact that in order to pronounce this ch sound, your mouth goes into the particular shape that makes it easier to say the a. So that's why gutturals attract the pathach, because it makes them easier to pronounce. And one consequence of this is sometimes you have what's called a furtive pathach. We used this word earlier on, sus, which is a horse, and it has this vowel in the middle. With this type of noun where you have a vowel in the middle with just 2 letters, if the last consonant is a guttural, then you get a furtive pathach. So let's take a famous word, which is ruach. Now, you would expect it to look like that. You've got your first consonant, resh, your middle vowel, and there's your second consonant, chet. But because it's a guttural, it likes to have that a sound. So this becomes ruach. It's again just to help you pronounce that guttural, ruach. And this is called the furtive pathach. When you look in a Hebrew Bible, you will see lots and lots of accents around the letters and vowels. And we're only going to think about 2 of them. One is called Silluq. This is a short line which occurs to the left of the vowel sign. And it's the same symbol that we have for a metheg. You'll remember that a metheg divides a syllable off from the rest of the word. So if we take this word, haaretz, if we put a silluq there, it shows that this is the final accent of the entire verse. The other punctuation mark which I want to mention is the Athnah. And it works like the Silluq in that it marks where the important syllable is in a word. And this one marks halfway through the verse. So if you have, say, the word Elohim, and it comes at the end of the first half of the verse, you'll pop your Athnah in just there. Now, ordinarily, this doesn't affect the pronunciation of the words at all, unless the accented syllable has a short vowel. So let's take, for instance, the word ma'im. That's the accented vowel. If ma'im has either silluq or athnah attached to it, the pathach becomes chametz. And this occurs with either the Athnah, or with Silluq. So watch out for that when you're reading your Hebrew and you come to the middle of the verse or the end of the verse. When you're reading the Hebrew Bible, you'll often come across two variations of a single word. And these are known as Kethibh and Qere. And they come from two Hebrew words. This is Kethibh, meaning what is written, and Qere, meaning what is read. The reason for this is because there are mistakes in the Hebrew text. And the editors, the Masoretes, made little notes in the margins to say what they thought it should be. And so one example is from Jeremiah 42, verse 6, where the impossible word anavu appears. And that's what's in the Kethibh, what's written. In the margin, the editors have written another word which they think it should be, which is anachnu. And so that's a correction to a mistake in the text. Kethibh and Qere can also happen where there's a word in the written text which is perhaps offensive or indelicate, and so the Masoretes decided to put a softer word in the margin. The most famous example of Kethibh and Qere is what happens to the divine name. This is sometimes called the tetragrammaton because there are 4 letters. And we imagine that the divine name was something like Yahweh. But because we don't want to pronounce the divine name, what the Masoretes did was introduce the vowels of another word instead, which was Adonai. And this is my Lord. So that's how we refer to God as the Lord. And so they took the vowels from Adonai and put them in place of what we thought would be there. So we end up with something that looks like this. Note that the composite shua here has become a simple vocal shua under the yod, because a yod doesn't take a composite shua. But effectively, that has led to that has gone to there, and that has gone to there. And it's from this word that we get the made-up word Jehovah. But it's actually not meant to be pronounced like that. It's meant to be pronounced like this, Adonai. And so that's another Kethibh and Qere, which occurs so often it's called a Qere perpetuum, because it's always there. It happens hundreds and hundreds of times. So now you have all the tools you need to open a Hebrew Bible and read the text out loud and accurately. From here on in, we're going to be learning about the grammar and what the words actually mean.